It's almost like the album's full of very, very long, very kind of songs of that album, and they've just kind of tacked on El Dorado and Final Frontier minus Satellite 50. Come back to that. It's kind of like, let's say, the way that Dance of Death did to get you kind of into the mood. But then, whereas Dance of Death went into kind of really epic, metal-esque kind of fantasy kind of feel, this has gone more kind of proggy.
Yeah, well, there were proggy elements on Dance of Death, but there was always a solid core pace. There was wherever you went, in most of the songs, there was always a pacey element to it. On this album, on the Final Frontier, there are elements of pace, but you have to work that much harder to get to them. And again, they love the intro, and I'm not just talking about the first track. I'm talking about a bit later on. You've got things like Starblind, which is it's almost like, well, I suppose maybe a better example is the Talisman. It's almost like there's two songs, a long Bruce intro, then the song begins, and it's like I don't know. I mean, I know you're going to make this point later on, but I'll kind of come on to it a bit. It almost feels, and it's not gone as far, but it almost feels a bit St. Angerish in that if we can't make a 6-minute song, then we'll make 2 3-minute songs and bolt them together, or we'll whack a big intro on them.
I agree totally with that one. Listening to the album, there's an awful lot of cases where there's a song there and it's been padded, or it feels like it's been padded. They put a long intro in it. In the case of some songs, they put kind of what I'm going to describe as a mid-tro, where they've added sort of a bit in the middle for the pad the two. I think Avalon's a perfect example of that. I think that's got where it stops against the pace stops.
Yes.
Thing is, as I say, I have to add at the point. I grew up. My main album is Dance of Death. That's the one I first heard. So I grew up with that. The whole kind of blistering guitar solos. There's a bit of an intro, then you're into it. Then it's a whole epic thing, and it's just kind of weird to kind of slam the anchors on. And it, that's kind of a bit off-putting for me.
Stops. And don't you find as well? I mean, I don't mind a slow arty song. That's fine, but when you've listened to The Alchemist, Isle of Avalon, Starblind, and Talisman, by the time you get to Talisman, you're like, oh, come on. Just it doesn't have to be the Trooper now. I'll take anything.
Although, I have to say, when the Wild Wind blows at the very end...
Belter.
I mean, it's the longest track, and it's the longest song at the end of a long list of long songs.
Yeah.
But it works.
I think, for me, it's probably my favourite song on the album.
Well, I have to say my favourite song on the album is probably The Alchemist.
Really? Interesting.
Because it's got pace.
I rate that as my second lowest.
Really?
Yeah, I think Mother of Mercy is a cracking song.
I don't like the chorus. I think that...
Do you know, I mean, I've got issues with Bruce's vocals. I've got issues with Bruce's vocals, but I still think it works. I don't think it's too bad. Starblind, I agree with you, it's awful.
Starblind, Metal Hammer said that Starblind didn't need to be there, and they're spot on, it doesn't. There's nothing it's not the same. It reminds me of Angel of the Gambler from the Blaze Bayley era. It just kind of, it just exists.
It's just there as an entity.
Yeah.
That of all of them, that I must admit, I skip that most time. I mean, not all the time, but most time.
How do you feel with is it there Coming Home with that whole kind of ballady?
I like that. I like that.
Nice.
But this is the thing with Coming Home. It's like on any other album, any other metal album, you'd be like, that's the ballad, wicked. On this one, it's like it's another slow-paced song.
Yeah.
So although it's a cracking song, and if you listen to it in isolation, it's brilliant. In context, it doesn't maybe stand out as much as it should. Same with Mother of Mercy. It doesn't stand out as much as it should do because it's bogged down with other essentially classic rock songs.
I think, speaking of length, we have to kind of address this at the moment, which is Satellite 15.
Yeah, why? What was the point? I mean, for me, it feels like they did the Benjamin Brigg thing. Well, that was clever. Let's do more of it.
Yeah.
Why? Why do it? Why?
The thing is, the Benjamin Brigg thing existed in the single for Benjamin Brigg, whichever. Satellite 15 was kind of tacked on to Final Frontier. The thing is, it's kind of jarring. Satellite 15 doesn't sound like the intro for the Final Frontier, the song. The two kind of, in fact, it stops, and then that starts at a different tempo. I mean, the only thing I thought of is whether it's something they've kind of planned it as a intro to their live shows. Or they're going to use Satellite 15 as a way of getting in.
Maybe, but it's not a very good intro.
No, I'm not 100% sure whether some of the drumming on it is drum machine rather than.
Oh, I would suspect not.
No.
And I wouldn't be willing to.
Maybe it's a Nico showcase then.
I've got to say, people always said that Matter of Life and Death was Nico's album, was a drummer's album. I think this one is too. I think his especially jazz influenced style drumming is fantastic. I think he does really, really well.
I mean, I've been an advocate for saying that what they should have done with Final Frontier, the song, is have Satellite 15 part as track 1.
They should have done,
track 2.
Because then we would have had the option not to put it on.
I think it's a nice song. It's a good song in isolation.
I think both of those songs are they're by a long way the easiest to listen to songs on the album.
Yeah,
I think, and they're a nice way to, if you just want a belter, and like say Iron Maiden went on for another 20 years, they won't. But if they did, and they played a mixed set with Final Frontier, they would probably be the ones that would slot naturally into a historic set.
I can't see them playing. I said it'd be a good intro song. I can't see them playing Final Frontier midway through the set with Satellite 15 on.
With that as well. No, I can't really.
And I mean, it doesn't really. I mean, it showcases drumming. It doesn't really showcase anything else.
I was going to say to you, bear in mind, as we all know, Iron Maiden are a band with 3 guitarists. Is this a 3-guitarist album?
No. I mean, you get solos on top of rhythm playing. That's 2 guitarists. I'm probably a terrible hypocrite for saying it. I cannot tell which solo belongs to which Iron Maiden guitarist.
Yeah, and I know some people can, and that's fine. But with the pace the way it is now, and that much more keyboard in the background, I don't. They don't need that many. I mean, there's an argument to say you don't ever need 3 guitars and whatever, but there seems to be that much more redundancy on this album than any of the previous 3, even, shall we say?
Yeah. I mean, there's a certain amount of copying. I don't know if that's copying is the wrong word. There's a certain amount of influences from other recent albums as well. Don't you feel, for example, like what was I saying? Starblind's got the way the keyboard comes in is very reminiscent of Dance of Death.
Yes, no,
And the intro to Talisman is very much like the last track on Matter of Life and Death.
But the thing is, I suppose you've got where does musical themes stop and nicking riffs from previous albums start?
Yeah.
This is the murky area. We've talked about the progressing, and there's a very obvious progression, maybe since Brave New World onwards. And in some forms, that's a very close progression, right the way across albums. Now, I don't know if that's something deliberate, or they've found a little comfort zone and they're staying in that, or what. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't like to think that they're shutting them out. I don't like to think that, and I wouldn't suggest that they are, but I don't know. It is uncomfortably close at times.
Just segueing a little bit, going away from the auditory side of things, what did you think of the artwork for? Well, first of all, what did you think of the new Eddie logo? Because obviously we have the cross guns from last time. Quite nice.
It wasn't as good as the Matter of Life and Death one, but I like the fact that they're rebranding with every album. It's something that worked for My Chemical Romance. So why shouldn't they do it to try and have a bit more success? And the artwork's always good with Maiden. I mean, you're going to get banging shirts and banging album covers and everything. So I like it, and I like the idea of a themed album, and I like the idea of a space themed album. I think it's a good idea. I mean, they've kind of done the war thing. That's been something that's been rolling on, and this album's not without its conflict songs, of course. I mean, it's kind of part of the course for Maiden.
And what did you think of the Final Frontier as a single? They had the whole space flight video thing, and
that was quite well done, wasn't it?
That's probably the best Maiden video I've seen. I mean, let's be fair, like any heavy metal band, videos are sometimes a bit suspect.
It's no Calico with Madness, is it?
Oh no, but it did the job, I suppose. We all bought the album.
But I don't know, in terms of this album, it's just I can't remember an album making me feel more angry. I listened to it, I was like, oh please let me understand it, please let me get it and like it. Then I convinced myself I liked it. I was like, I like this album, I love it. And the thing is, you have to listen to it quite a few times in order to really get into it and to like it. And in all honesty, if it wasn't Maiden, I'm not sure I would have worked that hard.